a huge storm that's coming to the United States over the next 48 hours that is going to bring a variety of problems to the United States. This includes the threat of severe weather like damaging winds, large hail, and even a few tornadoes. In addition to this, there will be a potential for a winter storm, and there is also a large cold air mass coming behind this storm. But before that happens, we're going to be dealing with record-breaking high temperatures tonight all the way through tomorrow. Go ahead and discuss what that severe weather potential is across areas in the Midwest and the Ohio Valley tomorrow, which is tossing trampolines on Tacos Tuesday. Right now, there is a slight risk of severe weather. This includes areas from southern Michigan all the way back into southeast Missouri, which, by the way, a slight risk of severe weather is a 2 out of 5 on the severe weather scale, essentially meaning that this is a low to medium risk overall of severe weather. In addition to this, we do have a marginal threat of severe weather from parts of Michigan all the way back into northern Arkansas, and even including parts of the Northeast, like areas like Pennsylvania and as well as West Virginia, and even a sliver of western New York. Just something you don't see very often for February. And by the way, at one point, this was a slight risk as far south as areas into Texas. That is no longer a threat that far down to the south. And even central Arkansas, you are no longer in the risk of severe weather, at least for now. I don't think that'll change. In terms of the threats for tomorrow evening, the main concern is going to be damaging winds in addition to large to even perhaps very large hail. There is actually a hatched area here across southern Michigan and as well as back into areas like northwest Ohio and north central Indiana and even near the Chicago suburbs. This is for the potential of 2-inch diameter hail or greater. That's at least an isolated threat. So if you have any vehicles outside, make sure to bring them into a garage or cover them over, whatever you need to do to make sure those are protected. In addition, to make sure you protect your plants outside, especially with hail. That can definitely be a concern. Tornado risk right now, it's on the low to medium side. I would not be shocked if we did have a small enhanced risk of severe weather, by the way, somewhere up here in northern Indiana tomorrow, but I do think it's going to be a last second call from the Storm Prediction Center because this is overall a pretty conditional risk of severe weather when at least it comes to the tornado threat. I think damaging winds and hail definitely going to happen to some extent. Tornado risk is a bit more conditional. Right now, there is a 5% region across areas from the Chicago suburbs back into northwest Ohio. Really, the biggest thing with this is that the moisture in the lower levels and as well as the shear are lacking a little bit in the lower levels. So those are two issues with this particular severe weather setup across areas in the Midwest and as well as the Ohio Valley. Now let's talk more about that severe weather timing across areas in the Midwest and the Ohio Valley. This is beginning at 6 o'clock Central Time. Notice we'll be watching for some thunderstorms to fire up right along the Wisconsin and Illinois border. Now, any storms that fire off north of the warm frontal boundary, which would include stuff like this, are more capable of just some large hail and maybe a little bit of damaging winds as well. I'm not expecting nearly as much of a tornado risk with that, but once we get closer to 8 o'clock, the area that we will have to watch for very closely is going to be right in here. If any discrete supercells get going, and if we have enough moisture and low-level shear, there will be a much better chance there to see at least a couple of tornadoes, if not maybe even a few tornadoes in this particular setup. By about 9 o'clock or so, storms are rolling through southern Michigan and as well as into central and northern Indiana. Even though the HRR model is not really picturing any major supercells in this area, there is definitely a chance for 1 or 2 discrete supercells in this area that could produce, again, all modes of severe weather. By 10 to 11 o'clock, those storms are continuing to roll through Indiana and as well as back into western Ohio. A cluster of storms will be ongoing from central Michigan back near Detroit. Those ones, again, are primarily going to be large hail. I don't anticipate nearly as much of a tornado risk, at least north of this warm front. And then by midnight or so, most of these storms are moving off to the east. I do anticipate that most storms after about 11 o'clock tomorrow night will not be severe. If they are, damaging winds will be the main concern. And eventually by around 4 in the morning, a line of storms will attempt to develop back down in southern and central Ohio, back into Kentucky, where damaging winds will be the main concern. Back into the Ohio Valley, notice storms will be firing off around about 8, 9 o'clock or so. Those storms in southern Illinois could be capable of a little bit of damaging winds and large hail, maybe a brief tornado. By around midnight or so, storms rolling through southern Indiana, and by the overnight hours, again, that line of storms developing. And as you wake up at 6 a.m. going into Wednesday morning, storms will be ongoing from about southeast parts of Ohio back into even central Tennessee. Eventually by lunchtime Wednesday, all those storms are moving off to the east. Friendly reminder, we might be going live for this tomorrow, so make sure that you are subscribed to the channel and click the bell icon down below so you're notified if and when we do go live. Here's what we're talking about with this entire storm as we go into Wednesday. This storm will continue to move to the east. A bit of snow will be possible on the backside of this low pressure system in the Midwest, and is really mainly the upper Midwest, by the way, into northern Michigan as we go into Wednesday morning. Snowfall accumulation will be mostly under an inch, but a few areas might get closer to 3 to 6 inches if you're in very far northern Michigan. By the time we go into Saturday into Sunday, active weather pattern developing in the southeast. By Sunday into Monday, that large storm will be possible across much of the Great Plains into the Midwest. But again, exactly where we see snow and ice potential, in addition to where we see severe weather, still remains highly uncertain due to the fact that this storm is still about 7 days out from now. And eventually, as we go into Tuesday and Wednesday of next week, an active weather pattern is likely in the eastern tier of the United States. Here's the probability of seeing greater than 1 inch of snow. Notice main areas to be watching for that will be the Michigan Peninsula and as well as northern Michigan. I don't anticipate Chicago really picking up much snow, but there will be at least some snow flurries going into Wednesday morning. Last thing I want to talk about is the big temperature shift that's coming to the United States. Notice record-breaking high temperatures possible even tomorrow afternoon. Cold air mass will start to usher in as we go into Wednesday, anywhere across the Midwest, back into the northern and central plains. This cold front will go very far down to the south, and we are going to see a big temperature change going into Wednesday. Notice this as we go into Tuesday afternoon. High temperatures still in the 80s and 90s in the southern plains, the Midwest in the 60s and 70s. That cold front pushes through Wednesday morning, going all the way down through Texas. Many areas on the East Coast will also see this. Going into Thursday morning, that'll be one of the colder mornings of the entire week, with many areas in the Midwest and as well as the Northeast dropping below 20 degrees as winter will make a brief return. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit the like button down below and subscribe if you've not already.